Welcome to the Reflective Rebels podcast, where each episode we're joined by someone on the sofa who's willing to put down the mask and go behind the shiny LinkedIn profile and talk about what it's really like to be a human in business. This week, I've got Emma Sherlock. Welcome.
Hello.
I got that out without completely failing.
You did. Although I like the fact you think we're going behind the shiny LinkedIn profile. I'm not sure mine's that shiny.
So it's not that shiny. That's a good start. Then we don't have to go too deep behind.
No.
So I like to start just somewhere unexpected.
Yeah.
So tell me about what you like to do when it rains.
Potter about the house. I'm very boring.
Potter about the house.
Yeah, I like pottering. We built our own house.
Gorgeous.
And we only moved in 2022 after having lived in a caravan for 3 years. So when it rains, I just like nothing more than shut the garden gate, shut the front door and just potter about the house. As long as it's tidy. If the kids are in, not so much. No, it's just, it's nice to be at home, I think, when it's raining. If it's a winter's night and it's really dark or a winter's afternoon, I quite like to drive along Warwick Road and nosy in people's front windows to see what their furniture they've got, or at Christmas especially to see the Christmas trees. Yeah, that's like if it's a cold winter's night.
And something about a lit bay window, isn't there?
Yes, it's gorgeous. Yeah, so I love a little mooch along Warwick Road, and there's some other streets. So I'm like,
who's this woman driving at 15
really
miles an
slowly,
hour?
like gawking in the windows. So, but I think when it's raining, it's just nice to be at home. Yeah.
Right, let's just wind back then. So that sounds like you were living in a caravan for 3 years, 2 of which were in COVID.
We moved into the caravan in August 2020. Yeah.
With how many kids? 3, like me.
3 children, a
how
cat
are you?
and a dog.
Still
here and married. It was really hard.
Tell us about that adventure.
So it's something that Bobby's my husband. We've always watched Grand Designs and we've always gone, oh, it'd be great, it'd be so good, wouldn't it? And we lived in a village called Newby East, and we did a big extension on that house, and we bought some land and we did a driveway, and really enjoyed living there. It was a really lovely place to live. And we had we moved in with our little girl, had our second baby there, and then I was pregnant with our third when we decided we'd outgrown it, really. We were getting to that point where it wasn't too small because it was a lovely size, but it just wasn't working for us how we wanted it to. And every house, we looked at about 35 houses on the hunt for another house. And every house we went into, I went, right, knock this wall down. We're going to have to knock that wall down. We'll change this. We'll put this over there. And I don't like the garden. We're going to have to dig out this bit of the garden. And by the time we looked at all these houses, I was like, this is insane. Like, can we finance our own? Can we do it? And a bit of sweet talking to both sides of our parents, a bit of help because we couldn't do it all on our own. And then, so we bought a piece of land and sold our house. Our house was on the market before lockdown. We actually already had 2 or 3 buyers that had offered us asking price. And then lockdown happened. So we said, right, we'll put it on pause. And then when they lifted lockdown a bit more in the August, we said, you know what, let's sell, let's get it done. And moved into the caravan. And put the caravan on the land, on the site, and lived there what we thought was going to be a year and turned into nearly 3, with a big shit tank that had to be emptied every month, and it was horrible. I wouldn't want to live in a caravan again. I couldn't. We weren't, and also, we're not travellers, so we're not set up to live in a caravan. So we were meant to live there temporarily, and ended up living there for nearly 3 years.
A hell of a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I was racked with guilt for a lot of it because I was like, one of our children, my youngest, Gus, he thought that was life, and we'd built this big house, and he thought we were building it for somebody else. So that was our job. So when we took him round the house, and we were like, so we let the kids all decorate their own bedrooms. It was only white paint because it's that first layer of paint, on the plaster. So the kids all painted their rooms. With my dad, actually, he painted them all white, and Gus was like, do you know, Mum, this would be a really nice house for someone. We've done a good job. And I was like, what do you mean, darling, for someone? And he was like, well, whoever's going to live here. And I went, darling, we're going to live here. This is your bedroom. You just hadn't twigged at all. And I was like, oh my God, my poor little man. He thinks that he's doomed to live in that caravan
That was just
forever.
His life, though.
I know. And the caravan was so small. Like the kids, I mean, by the end of it, when we bought the caravan, we rented it actually and put it on the land. And we had a living area, a dining area, a little kitchen and a desk. And then thankfully we had this little corridor. I put the washing machine. Then we had a bathroom. And then on the right, we had a storage cupboard and 2 bedrooms. And so my dad built, my youngest, this weird shaped bed so he could live in the storage cupboard. So I had the big two bunk beds in one bedroom, me and Bobby in the other, and then my poor youngest was in this like odd shaped bed that was like kind of wedged into the storage cupboard of the caravan. So it was an adventure, but it wasn't. It was really fun when we first moved in the August. It was so cozy and really exciting, and like our first Christmas in the caravan. You know, it was all felt like an adventure. By the next winter, when we'd had frozen pipes for 10 days, no hot water, no heating, I was over the adventure. But yeah, it was certainly something to have ticked off. You know, we built our own house, we did a self-build, and it was a wonderful experience. And you know, we live in a house that we designed entirely for ourselves.
Amazing.
So yeah, silver lining.
One of the things I'm really interested in is how people go from having a dream to actually doing the thing.
Yeah.
What was it? Was there a particular conversation, a moment, a particular driver that made you going from the person who watches grand designs to the person who actually built a house? I'm fascinated by that.
I don't know. I think it's. I think you're either one of those people or you're not. There's nothing I don't do. There's like my husband dreads it. I get an idea and it's done. A couple of months later, we're doing it. We've started talking about building a second, and he's going, "Oh God, no, she's had the idea," because once I've had the idea, it inevitably normally happens.
There's no backing out.
Yeah, because I'm like, you know what we could do? We could build a second house in the field for when we're older, a smaller one. He's like, "Oh no, let's just park that idea for now." So I don't know. I don't remember a moment where I said, "Right, I'm doing it." I just remember a series of small decisions that led me to the one that said, nothing else is good enough. We have to do that.
We're doing it.
Yeah. I don't, there wasn't like a eureka moment where I went, we must, you know, it wasn't like a sign or, you know, had a dream or anything like that. It's just, this is what we wanted to do. We've always talked about it. There's nothing else that's a better option. Let's go and do it. It's the same with our kids. You know, like I was like, should we have kids? Yeah, let's have kids. All right, let's get pregnant. You know, we were very fortunate as a couple that we fell pregnant quite quickly. And then we had second. And then we decided, well, actually what happened was I got a puppy because I wanted a third and Bobby was trying to put me off, so we got a puppy. And then I did a couple of sporting events to put me off a bit longer. And then I had the third. So if I have the idea, eventually it's going to happen. That's kind of how my life operates, really.
Where did that come from then? Let's wind right back to young you. Paint
Tiny
the picture.
Emma.
Where are you at 8-year-old Emma?
So tiny Emma, 8 years old, went to boarding school.
Right.
When I was 8, yeah. So
At the age of 8, you...
Yes.
Oh, that was a good age to pick then.
8, yeah. So my parents are military.
Yeah.
So I'd moved house every 2 years from being born, really.
Where in the world or the country?
So I was born in Germany, moved back to England when I was about 3, and then we lived everywhere, like all across the country, really, largely in the south. And then I went to boarding school when I was 8 to a little school in Richmond called Assumption School for Girls, run by nuns. They've not had the greatest influence. I'm an atheist now, very passionate atheist, actually. But it was a wonderful time, and I had a lot of friends, and I lived with them when I was 8. So I literally ran the corridors of the school all night, and you know, had the best time ever playing. We had a game called Tom, Dick, and Harry, and 3 of us used to pretend to have guns, and we used to run around this huge sort of mansion, essentially, and it's a really old, stately building that was a boarding house, and play games. And the teachers could never find us. The house mistresses were. You know, and we were 8, so we were literally running around like little 8-year-olds, like little wild dogs, just all over the building. So that was 8-year-old Emma, went to boarding school and slept in a dormitory and packed up my trunk with my mum and dad and was really excited to go. And that was sort of, I stayed at boarding school till I was 18. At 2 different schools in the end, because the one I was at closed down. And a lot of the girls went to a school called Barnard Castle, which is over in the northeast. But I didn't. I went south to Hertfordshire and went to a school down there called St Francis College, and then stayed there till I was 18. A very, very privileged education with the support of my family and the army. And it was all girls. So I was St Trinian's Eat Your Heart Out. Yeah. It was a very colourful education, I think. I was quite naughty. I didn't really like to follow the rules. The deputy head at my school was not my favourite person, and I was not hers.
Go on, we need a couple of stories.
Oh, it's just, I don't even know if I want some of them. I want to talk about some of them.
Yeah, just do the quick filter in your head.
Yeah, which ones? None of it was really bad. No. It was just, I was a young girl in an all-girls school, and I could think of nothing better than snogging boys. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go and find boys to snog. And so, that was the general vibe of sort of year 8, 9, 10 at school. But I think it was just when I was with my friends and we were all a bit mischievous, we would just find something to do that was a bit naughty. Like we'd break out of a window and walk along the roof, or we would, go and try smoking down behind the apple orchard, or we would find a way to sneak somebody onto the hockey pitch who shouldn't really be there, or, then nothing was like, it wasn't wildly dangerous or really, really naughty. It's just mischievous, I think, is probably... Yeah. But obviously in quite a strict Catholic school where girls are supposed to behave a certain way, I didn't really behave. I didn't fit the mould. So, yeah. And I remember once they found wine in my wardrobe at school. I think I was sixth form by this point. But yeah, I was really almightily given a right old telling off for that. But yeah, just mischievous, I suppose. I still don't actually respond well to rules. I never have. And interestingly, actually, with a military upbringing in a very rank-orientated, rule-orientated world, bizarrely, I don't respond well to rules. But I do respond really well to instruction, which I think, if I understand the instruction and I understand why I'm carrying out the instruction, then I'm good to go. But don't just put a rule down in front of me because it should be there. That's when it's just like a red rag to a bull for me.
You're going to go?
Yeah, I'm going to smash that rule. Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. I had a wonderful childhood. I loved being at school, loved being at home. I was a full boarder, which means that you go to school at the beginning of term and you stay till half term and you go home for an expat weekend. So I'd have half terms and holidays at home. And my parents sometimes lived in England, sometimes lived in Germany. So I'd fly back and forward. And the holidays in Germany, summer holidays were just the best because we lived on a really big army base and there was lots of kids and we'd just roam the base for the 2 months we were off. And there was a really big swimming pool and there was a park and there was forests. And then, I'd have some time with my parents. We'd go on holiday. Then I'd come back and find my friends and just really lovely memories of, holidays and childhood and also lovely memories of being naughty at school. Like, when you get told off and you have that moment, you go, oh my God, this is awful. But actually, when I look back on it now, it's just all character building. It's just...
I was going to ask what you think you took from it or how it shaped you, because that's why we went back there to that 8-year-old. What?
Yeah. I never think about how it shaped me as such. I mean, there's probably a whole mix of positive and negatives from it. As a negative, I really struggle to ask for or be given help. Like that's a that's a negative, something I have to actively work on, because I obviously became independent at such a young age that, and I genuinely believe that what I think is right, which means that also even things like now in later life, I'm really hard to coach because I don't believe anybody knows the answer except me. And I don't mean that as an arrogance, but you have to prove to me you know the answer before I can trust you. And that, I think that is when you go to boarding school when you're 8 and you start to form a life of your own, on your own, with your peers, not with parents, not with, and house mistresses do a great job, but they're not your parents. They're there to make sure you're clean, washed, fed and got, warmth over your head. And, they're not, back in the day as well, where, we're talking about how old I'd been? It was pre-1990 when I went to boarding school. Maybe it was 1990. Emotional well-being and the stuff we know now about how you treat children and, it wasn't a thing really. So I suppose there's probably some negatives mixed in with those positives. But ultimately, what that life created was a very independent woman with a very determined woman with ideas that perhaps other people might struggle with. but I don't think it's a negative because it's who I am.
Yeah.
So and I only think about it when you're asking me to analyse it. Otherwise, it's just This
And
is who you
usually
are.
our greatest strengths and greatest weaknesses are just two sides of the same coin. aren't
Well,
they?
that's
Yeah,
exactly
the things that
it.
make us
So,
brilliant.
yeah. So the thing that makes me very independent means that I struggle to ask for or accept help, but also is probably the reason that I'm so driven.
Yeah. So where does this 18-year-old go off? This independent, feisty, rule-breaking 18-year-old go to?
She, when
Were
we're
they
all
ready?
good, raggy 18-year-olds go to Newcastle. Where I learned how to drink.
It sounds like if you had wine in the wardrobe, you were already
I was already
practicing.
on the way, yeah. So when I wanted to go straight to uni, so I didn't take a gap year. I went straight, did my A-levels. So I was like, I was determined enough and headstrong enough to get my head down and get all my, good grades and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Went off to university and I couldn't decide for the life of me what subjects to do. I'd always been, since I was about 5, I wanted to be either a radio presenter or a businesswoman. That was it. They were the two things always, radio presenter or businesswoman. There was no in between. It was one or the other. And so when I went to university, I couldn't really decide what to do. So I did English literature, psychology and history of art as a joint degree. And very quickly realised that this was a mistake because drinking beer is far more interesting than doing 3 different subjects. So I dropped 2 of them and just did a single English degree. I mean, there was more to it than that. The different departments don't always communicate that well. So I had deadlines that were the same deadlines. And so I ended up with, sort of peak times of workload where it was possibly too hard to manage. I'm sure joint degrees have it better now, but at the time it didn't work for me. So I decided to drop just to do English literature because I was stronger at it. I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed storytelling, I enjoyed hearing stories. And so that's when I did English literature in the end. And I had 3 years in Newcastle and they really were the most amazing, exciting, brilliant, personality forming, life forming years that I absolutely loved that time at university. I've got some brilliant friends that I'm still really close to now from that time in my life. And I loved it. I loved university. And I loved Newcastle as a city as well. Aside from the nightlife, it's just a brilliant city. I still love Newcastle now, like if I go over there, which I don't get to do very often. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time in Newcastle. I also met my now husband there when we were 19. Young love, he had very muscular arms. So yeah, that was a thing that I noticed. I was like, oh, look at those arms.
Look at those arms.
Yeah, when I was actually I met him in first year of university and we became friends for a little while and didn't get together until second year.
So what was the connection? How did you meet? Just
we were in the same halls of residence and we just had similar groups of friends. He did an accounting and finance degree, obviously. And I was doing English literature. And so we just ended up with similar groups of friends and just drank lots together, really. And, went out on wild nights out. And then at the end of first year and beginning of second year, we ended up getting together. And I remember my friend Simon saying to me on a night out, I can't remember what it was. It would have been before Christmas. We'd all gone out for a night out and we'd gone for dinner for a friend's birthday. And I remember this night really vividly because it was my friend Len's birthday and Len sat on a chair and the chair buckled underneath him and all 4 legs came out from underneath him and he hit the ground. And he wasn't a particularly large guy. It was just a broken chair. But obviously then all the jokes came from that. But I remember it really vividly because that happened. And then within the same hour, my friend Simon said to me, it's all going to end in tears with Bobby Emma because it's not like you're going to get married. And now we're married with 3 kids running a business together. So, yeah. And so that was in second year of uni where I met Bobby. And then we left university and I went travelling for a year. And Bobby didn't come with me. He stayed in England. So I went to South Africa. Well, I went to India and South Africa. So I went to South Africa and I worked on a newspaper for 3 months. I worked on a broadsheet newspaper called the Cape Argus. And again, just had the best time. I covered so many stories because by that point, I'd worked out that in order to be a radio presenter, what I really was passionate about was storytelling and writing, which meant journalism. So I went and worked on this broadsheet newspaper for 3 months. And the stuff I covered and the stories I did as a young woman were really scary, exciting, all the things that I don't want my kids to do. But they will. But so I,
Can you tell us one of those stories that?
Oh God, there were loads. So one of them, the problem was when I went to South Africa, and I haven't been back for years and years, so I don't know what the political situation is like there now. But it wasn't really that long after apartheid, and so there was a lot of still fallout from that. And obviously you have, in South Africa, you have three races. You have the Cape Coloureds, who are sort of a browner coloured skin. You have black and you have white. You have these three races, and they're all very proud of being their own race. And obviously I was an English white person who wasn't racist and had never really experienced it in my very privileged life. And I made wonderful friends with, all of my friends actually were black and Cape Coloured women who I'd become very close to while I was out there. And I can remember one, Teresa, she really sadly died of a heart attack not that long ago, but she was a friend of mine on the paper. And we were all these young girls who just sort of got together and were starting out in our careers. And she absolutely loved black men, and the darker the black they were, the better for her. And in South Africa, like in this country, some of us are really uncomfortable talking about race like this, but in South Africa, it's perfectly normal. And I remember she used to go, sweeter the juice. Oh, no, that was wrong. It was, blacker the berry, sweeter the juice. That's what she used to say. And she married a black man and they had beautiful babies. And my friend Diane, she's now very successful national TV presenter out there. So they were, and Candice as well. They're all, these three women were just really informative, I think, really informative friendships in that period of my life. And I covered the release of the only white lions into the wild. That was a fantastic story to be on. I covered some really sad stories as well about, I can't remember the details of them, if I'm honest, but it was all race related and poverty related. And I had a spread, an opinionated editorial that I did that was all about sort of the system of the point creating system. So they brought in a system where you would earn points. I can't remember the detail of it. It was a political system, and it was a bit like benefits, I suppose, or something like that. And it was very complex. I remember I studied it for weeks and eventually I had like a 2-page opinionated editorial. It was my first piece of really serious, groundbreaking journalism. And I remember the news editor, she was this Afrikaans woman who, what was her name? Can't remember her name, but she was really frightening. And she was so proud of this piece of journalism I did. So I just honestly thought she had a halo. When you see a very powerful, frightening woman, that's what she was like to me. But I was in awe of her. So when she told me that this piece of journalism was brilliant and she printed it and she put me on the front page of her newspaper, just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my goodness, that's it. I've done it. I've made it. I wish I remembered all their names. I've got terrible memory and I can't even remember the story, but I've got it at home in a newspaper somewhere. And after that, I asked her if I could have my own adventure sports column while I was out there, and she gave me my own adventure sports column. So I went skydiving, bungee jumping, all on the newspaper. I didn't have to pay for any of it. I did sandboarding, like surfing, sand surfing. I did all sorts. I went on a like a rib boat. I don't know another way to describe it. It's called a rib, like a blow up boat thing with a big engine on it.
Inflatable, fast.
I did a ride around the bottom of the Cape in one of those boats. I did all sorts, and I had my own adventure sports summer column in the newspaper. So that was an absolutely amazing time in South Africa, and I was there over Christmas, which obviously is summertime there.
Yeah.
So Bobby came out to visit, and we ended up having fast food for Christmas dinner. Because we didn't really know what else to do, so we just went to this like fast food restaurant. We were just young and like didn't have a lot of money, and just went to this fast food restaurant. And I travelled up to Johannesburg, and we had a friend called Jeff who played cricket. He was a professional cricketer, but in Cumbria and all across the country, the professionals come over and they pick a team and they'll play with a team for the summer or the winter, whichever way around you look at it. And he had been over in this country. And so when I was over there, I'd got his number off Bobby and said, Jeff, I'm coming up to Johannesburg. Like, do you want to meet up? And he was like, yeah, great. Like, call me when you get here. And so he took me to his township where he'd grown up. And Jeff's been shot like 2 or 3 times. He's grown up in a really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not depraved. What's the word?
Deprived.
Deprived, thank you. Yeah, it's the perimenopause fog kicking in. We had. So I went up to see him, and he showed me where he grew up, and I met his mum and some of his family. And his mum still lives in one of the original township huts, or she did at the time, where they have cow skin on the roof. And I was like, my goodness, like I can't believe it that your mum lives like this. And he was like, yeah, she'll never. He didn't. He lived in like a modern flat, down the road in Johannesburg city centre. And we were driving around, and he took me to this little. I can't remember what they call them, the bars. They have a different name for a bar. It's not a bar at all. It's somebody's house selling illegal booze. And the bottle of beer was, no word of a lie, as big as a Coke bottle, like a family-sized Coke bottle. Yeah, that was how big the bottle of beer was. And they were just drinking them like you drink a Peroni. Like that was you. They were just. I was like, okay, like just drinking two hands, like literally holding the bottle with two hands, drinking this beer. And then as soon as it started to get dusk. He was like, right, in the car and get your head down. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, you're white. You'll get shot here. Get your head down and I'll drive you out. So I was like, all right, okay.
Great.
So like half cut Emma. I was like, okay. So I just got in the back of the car. He was like, get your head down. So I did. So yeah, lots of formative experiences in South Africa. Really.
What was it like to be somewhere like that compared to, obviously you travelled around a lot, but they must have been quite different to the places you've been before and seeing things that were quite different?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I was looking at it through the eyes of a woman in her early 20s. So I think if I was to go back with the life experience I've had with my own children, it would feel very different. But when you're there looking at it through the eyes of somebody who's in their early 20s, really, it was about my career. The stories were really important to me, but they were stories. It wasn't my life, which... It doesn't affect how sad the story is or how difficult the moment is. But when photographers in particular talk about covering really awful stories like deaths and plane crashes and things like that, but they always talk about it that they were looking through a lens, so it doesn't necessarily feel like it's kind of similar. I think some of the stories were. Heartbreaking and but at the same time there's a very strong sense of community, and I don't know, it was certainly like nothing I'd experienced at home, and you were always on high alert. There were a few hairy situations when I was out there, but I suppose it's just about being vigilant, and I had this very independent upbringing where I looked after myself. There was a time, when Bobby came out to visit, there's a lot of homelessness out there. And I used to have to walk from my guest house I was staying in through the city down to the newspaper building. And I used to get asked for money all the time by these little kids. And in the first few days there, it was heartbreaking. I was like, oh my goodness, look at them. They've just got nothing. So I gave one of them, I only had English pounds on me. I'd been there a day or two. So I gave him an English pound, just some change from my pocket. And they all, at the time, it was like 10 Rand to the pound or something. So the English money was worth loads. Yeah. And anyway, when I left the newspaper that night, I got hordes of them following me home. And then when I came back into it the next day, they were looking out for me. So by the time Bobby came to visit, I was really harsh. I was like, no, go away. Couple of swear words. That's it. F off. Bobby was like, Emma, you're talking to children. I was like, Bobby, if I don't behave like this, I get followed by 20 kids everywhere I go. I go out to buy a sandwich and they find me at the end of the newspaper building. If I'm heading home, they come and find me. So it did get to a point where you don't become numb to it, but you certainly become very aware that your own personal safety is going to be at risk if you don't actually make a stand. But you wouldn't talk like that to a homeless child here. You just wouldn't. But it wasn't... it's just not the same. I don't know how to say it. There's not one homeless child. There's 25 of them together, So really, really awful and sad at the time. I don't know what it's like now. That I'm talking about, 2005 or 4 or something like that. And I don't know if anything of what I've just said is politically correct, but it's just, you asked me how it was at the time. And it was very different to being at home. And I went... The worst country that I visited actually was India. That was more heartbreaking. But I was older again. When I got back from South Africa, I did a master's in broadcast journalism so that I was properly qualified to be a journalist, so I could cover court cases and things like that. And before I went into work, I went to India and travelled India for a month. And that was heartbreaking cry. But again, I wasn't in India as a journalist. I was in India as Emma. When I was in South Africa, I was working.
You were there to do a job.
Yeah. And so I think the experiences are quite different, aren't they?
Mm.
Yeah.
So you ended up doing journalism then, I assume, following the masters and the trip to India.
Yes. Yeah. So after
you got
India,
what you wanted.
Yeah, I went to, I got a job with CFM first, actually, years and years ago, back in the day. I had a newsreading job with CFM, and then I worked.
How did you get that?
Oh, God,
first job?
Everybody always asks that, don't they? How did I get that? I just hounded people. I just wouldn't let anyone say no. Just literally, I remember one news editor. This one was a little bit older, and I'd been in the industry a little while, but was still trying to get the job I wanted. And I remember I got an email from him and just said, "Please stop emailing me." Your time will come. Please stop emailing me. His name is Mark. Yeah, I don't know what he does now. He was a news editor at BBC Radio Cumbria. He didn't. I think he was just had enough of me going, "Hi, Mark, it's Emma again. Like, still just seeing any vacancies." I can't remember the transition of what I did. So when I went to CFM, I had just finished my masters. Had I been travelling? I can't remember which order it was in. And I was really keen to be a newsreader. And I'm really good at newsreading, actually. So, in terms of knowing my strengths, I was good at reporting, I was good at telling stories, and I was good at newsreading. So what I really wanted was my own show, but, it's a bit cocky, isn't it? To come out of you. I have my own show, thanks. So I went in and I did some weekends for free. That was kind of the standard thing back then. I don't know what you do now. I haven't tried to get a job in the media for ages. But you'd work for free. So I did like 2, 3, 4, 2 days, never more than 2 days a week, I don't think, and generally on a weekend, and sort of got my foot in the door that way. Then I applied for a job after I've been working at CFM for a while with BBC Tees over in Middlesbrough. And that was when I got my first proper contracted job. That was BBC Radio Tees, or BBC Tees, I think it's called now. And that was amazing as well. That was, pretty gritty. Some of the stuff over there in Middlesbrough was pretty gritty, and the studio was right in the middle of the town centre. But it's just, radio for me is just really creative. And so that's what I loved about it. I could tell stories and try and think of a better way to tell something creatively that keeps the listener engaged. And also, news reading as well. It's essentially storytelling, but it's storytelling in a really, really succinct way. Like, you've got 3 lines, I need to get the story out. And then the way you make news reading interesting is you put different clips in. So, you can be creative with your clips or your vox pop or whatever it is you're using in your news editing. I haven't been at the BBC for years now, but at the time, that was what it was all about. It was all about, how can I tell this story creatively? How can I get the listener to engage with this? And there were some bonker stories over there as well. I remember one guy had something like, he had this tiny, tiny little newsagents, and I'd popped in to get a chocolate bar or something on the way home. And I was like, what the hell? He had something like 64 CCTV cameras. And I was like, what on earth is going on here? So he became a story. So I went back to the newsagent. I was like, there's this guy. It's a great story. You should see this little newsagents. It can't have been bigger than this room. And it had like 64 CCTV cameras in it, like on every shelf. And but anyway, when I went to interview him, he was like, I just get stuff nicked all the time. So this way I can, this was his way of securing his shop. Yeah. But it was a great story. And that's what I always found with journalism, actually, in the BBC. It was always the random little story that was the most interesting, because you hear more about that person's life or their reasoning or why they've done it. It wasn't really famous people. And interestingly, I don't see fame. I don't actually recognise it. Like, I don't know how to put it, but if you're talking to somebody, you're just talking to somebody.
Just a person.
Yeah, that's sort of. And so even when I interviewed famous people, politicians, Tony Blair, William Hague, back in the day, they were the ones that were all in the cabinet or wherever they were at the time. It was talking to a person. But what I hated was people that avoided the question. I can't bear people that don't answer the question. It used to make me insane. It used to be like, okay, I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to go back to the question, because what I want is an answer to this question, not the one you want to answer. Here's the question, especially with politicians. Yeah. But ordinary folk, when you're just talking about their lives or something that's bothering them, or you're trying to raise awareness about something, or you think that really should be in the public arena, they're just telling you about their stuff. They're just like telling you something they feel sad about or happy about or they've achieved or they want to achieve. Or so they were always more interesting. Like that guy with the 64 CCTV cameras in his tiny little newsagent's shop. I was bonkers. But that, I don't think that ever leaves you. Like once a journalist, always a journalist. You know, you don't switch off.
I'm going to pause for a moment just to say that the podcast is funded and sponsored, if you like, by my work coaching. So that's both one-to-one and through gatherings. If you are enjoying the story so far, it would be fantastic if you could subscribe, or if you have 15 more seconds, leave a review wherever you're listening, and you can hear more about the podcast's tips, tricks, and ideas to bring more joy into your life at reflectiverebels.co.uk/newsletter. When did this storytelling passion start? Because it's obviously been a theme.
I don't know, actually.
Where did it come from? What role did stories play in your childhood?
Gosh, I don't know. I've never thought about it. My mum and I used to read Enid Blyton, like when I was a kid. I loved Enid Blyton. So I loved reading when I was a kid. And Mum loves reading as well. She'd always have a book. Mum still reads a lot of books. I don't have time for it now, but Mum still loves a good story. So maybe it's just it's just always been there, perhaps. I don't remember a moment. It's just maybe always been there. I'm just nosy as well, right? Like there's something in that, isn't there? You're just a bit nosy. I just like to hear about other people's stuff. Like, and that's not necessarily always to repeat it or to tell it, but I'm interested in what people have done, why they've done it, what happened, how did they do that? I mean, there's whole jobs you've never even heard of. Like, how do you do that? I went years later when I was a journalist in Cumbria, actually. I went to visit Sellafield and they were telling me about some of the jobs. I was like, this is insane. How on earth do you end up in that job?
Yeah.
Like, where does that even come from? How does that even happen? Even not Sellafield. I remember when I was at Teesside, going to the docks and seeing the ships being dismantled. These huge pieces of machinery being taken down to scrap, to liftable bits of scrap. Like that job, how does that even happen? How do you do that? How do you begin to dismantle a ship that big? You know, so it's just that things like that. I just, it's fascinating to me. Normal things are fascinating, I suppose. You know, like maybe it's not that normal to dismantle a huge ship. I don't know, but it is to people in Middlesbrough. That's their jobs. That's what they're doing day to day. Yeah. Whereas I'm like, that's insane. How on earth do you get that to these, manageable pieces of metal that you're lifting around the fork or whatever they call it on the dock? So yeah, it maybe just always was a thing that was there in my life, that sort of interest or, reading books and then hearing about people's lives, and I suppose moving around a lot as well. I was constantly exposed to different people all the time. I don't know. It's not one. I couldn't pick a moment. It just always was there.
Proudest moment
of my life,
of your journalistic career, the journalistic part, I suppose.
Well, I did get my own show eventually. So I did have the News Hour. Then I was Borthwick back then. So when I was a journalist, I kept my maiden name for that part of my career.
Yeah.
So I had the News Hour with Emma Borthwick. So getting my own show was a real a milestone for me, a real big moment. Whether or not it was my proudest moment, I don't know. I really struggle with sort of like proudest or most joyous or thing I regret the most, or because one decision always supersedes the next, right? It's just like the next thing that comes along. So I don't recognize them. I can't find those moments. I don't know what they are, but it was certainly a milestone in my career to have achieved my own radio show. Yeah. And I was self-produced. So I was a producer presenter. So I literally decided every minute of that program. I decided what was in the headlines. I decided what was in the show. Obviously I had a news editor and, people who were senior to me in the building. But by that point in my career, I was making really good journalistic decisions on what to put in, what people found interesting. Because I've been a journalist for a long time. I had my own show for 7 years. And I've been a journalist, I think in total I was a journalist for about 15 or 17 years. So, I had my own show for half of that career. And I just got to a point with it actually where I had to the radio station I was at the time, towards the end of my career in journalism, was BBC Radio Cumbria, and I loved it there. I love the people there. I love the people in Cumbria. It was a really amazing platform for a woman to have access to as well, and I felt very strongly about women's rights and things like that. So, being able to tell stories, have that platform, it felt very privileged, and also there's a lot of gravity in it. Deciding what the stories of the day are, that's an important thing to do, especially for a journalist. But I got to a point where I wanted to if I wanted to take my career further, I had to leave Cumbria. So It would have been Manchester or London.
Yeah.
In reality, back in those days, and I didn't want to. I had 3 children, and we had a house, and so in the end, I made the decision to join the family business. It was all coincided with Bobby's dad had a career-ending stroke in 2014, and so he took on the role of 3 directors because his mum and dad left at the business at the same time. And then I had our 3rd child in 2017. We just had our 2nd in 2014. So a couple of years later, the business, Bobby was finding it quite hard on his own.
Yeah,
really, we needed another director there. And it was then I was like, well, I can try. Let's see what happens. There's a bit of an Emma-shaped hole in the business, and I can fill it, because if I'm not going to stay in journalism, I can give it a go with the family business and see if I'm of any help. So I went part-time in both at first to sort of ease me into that, and then eventually didn't want to move to London or Manchester, and so made the decision to stay with the family business full-time.
So your language shifted then, which was interesting.
Oh, really?
To I can try. Whereas up to this point, you've come across as very confident.
Yeah.
I know what I'm going to get, and I'm going to go and get it. But that was the first moment of
oh my God, what now?
Uncertainty in your story.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about.
So leaving journalism was, so when I left the BBC in 2018, I think it was, I had just really achieved what for me was the pinnacle of my career. I had my own show, and I gave birth to my 3rd child on the radio. Because I felt very strongly. I know you weren't expecting that. Sorry.
I have heard you tell this story.
Yeah, well,
but I think for people that haven't,
well,
they're going to want me to follow up with that. We can't just
skim over that.
We can't just skim over that sentence.
Well, I had really hard birth with the first one.
Yeah.
With Lexi. I had an emergency section with the second one, Sebastian. And so when I got pregnant with Gus, I was sort of 2 pregnancies in. I was a bit older. I was also had the lived experience of being a mother for that period of time as well. And I just felt really strongly that nobody was telling women the truth. And that is not to discredit anybody's work in terms of midwives or anybody in the healthcare system. At the time, that's how I felt. It was a feeling. Yeah. Whether it was true, is for other people to decide. But for me, my truth was that I didn't feel like women were getting the full story when it came to labour, birth, motherhood, what your options were or weren't, what should or shouldn't be a part of that process. And so when I fell pregnant with Gus, who's my 3rd, I decided that I was going to follow my pregnancy on air, and I ultimately was going to give birth on the radio. I was a news editor's nightmare, not a dream. They were not keen on this idea at all. They had real concerns about my mental health. They had concerns about the baby, the physical birth, what happened if it all went wrong. The health and safety forms, I'm sure, are a nightmare for them. But ultimately, my news editor, who is a woman called Alison Wood, was reluctantly supportive, is probably the way I would describe her. But she's a brilliant woman. I feel very respectful and a lot of love for Ali. But at the time, she was really scared. She was really worried. And also, nobody had ever done it before on the radio in this kind of environment. I think it was not long after that, we got One Born Every Minute on the telly.
Right.
But that was a whole other ball game in terms of their budget and stuff like that. We were a local radio station. So I know it was scary for the senior team at BBC Radio Cumbria for me to have done that. But it really did highlight some real issues in our system. At the hospital in Carlisle, for years, they didn't offer epidurals. That fundamental right to medication that was happening all over the rest of the country, women couldn't get it here. So there was some big issues that needed to be discussed in my opinion. And obviously the journalist in me, and I was pregnant, so I was a pregnant journalist. I was like, right, well, I'm the story now. Let's use me. So, and I actually had post-traumatic stress disorder from my first delivery, which I didn't know I had until I was pregnant the third time, because with the second one, I just put it all in a box. I went to Newcastle to give birth to Sebastian because I didn't know at the time, but you can attach PTSD to a place. And so I just refused to go to Carlisle. So when I got pregnant with Gus, and I was like, right, I'm just going to have, well, actually, I didn't want to have an elective section. I was told I had to have one in the end, which all worked out fine. But yeah, so I had to have a planned section with Angus. It sort of shifted something in my brain. So I went back to Carlisle, and then it's when all of the skeletons fell out of the closet. And I had a really wonderful doctor there, Dr. Hipple, I think her name was. And she became what you call a presenter's friend. So quite often in radio, you have somebody called a presenter's friend. I don't even know if these phrases still, I'm old school, maybe, I don't know. But back in the day, God, talk about like I'm 90. But, in like the 90s when, when was I on air? I can't remember, 2000s and teens or something. You had a presenter's friend. And so Dr. Hipple became my presenter's friend. So she would come into the studio with me. And when we were talking about things from a medical perspective, she was there for me to say, just explain that, what that means for people, because I wasn't a doctor, I'm not medically qualified. I was talking about it very much from a pregnant
Just
woman's
your
perspective.
Yeah.
And so therefore I had a medical expert in the room with me, and we covered all kinds of topics like fetal alcohol syndrome, PTSD, the options women have in terms of cesarean section or not. We followed my story psychologically because I recorded some of my sessions with Dr. Hipple, which made everybody very uncomfortable. Nobody liked, because I was very upset during a lot of them. But if I just felt really strongly that that I'm not the only one that's going through this. There's so many women. And there were women I interviewed at the hospital who were saying to me, yeah, I know what you mean. That's how I felt. And I didn't feel better until this. And so I had other women's voices on air. And so ultimately that's what I did. I gave birth to Angus, and his first little cry was broadcast for the county to hear. His little, Wah! And then it wasn't long after that where it felt I had some momentum then. I'd really put a lot into my career. But then couldn't really go any further in the studio I was in at BBC Radio Cumbria. And so changing from that into business, obviously radio presenter or businesswoman, I mean, it could have been either, felt very vulnerable. And I had to make a lot of mistakes, and I did make lots of mistakes, and I made mistakes with people, and I made mistakes that look back and think I could have handled that so differently. But I was very experienced, very knowledgeable journalist, and I was a very inexperienced, very green businesswoman. So that would explain the difference in the language. I went from feeling very confident to feeling very vulnerable. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about some of the fuck-ups? We'd love to know.
What, the business ones?
Yeah.
Mainly people orientated. It was really hard to find my feet as the boss.
Yeah.
Because and as well, it's a really different environment. In the BBC, I mean, it's not rank orientated, so to speak, but the
it's
structure.
a very specific culture and a very specific
you've got
way
reporters,
things
you've got
happen.
newsreaders, you've got presenters, you've got producers, you've got grades. You go and you're graded, and you grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You go up the grades, and ultimately, if the news editor pulls rank, you do what the news editor says, because that's the way we operate. Because going out on air, and if you are wrong, you're going to get sued. So, and that's the world I'd operated in. And I went from that, and I was very senior, I wasn't running the station, but I was running my own show. So to go from that into, right, I'm the boss of the budget, and with Bobby, don't get me wrong, it was two of us. But from my perspective, we're talking about me in this podcast, I suppose. It's all about me. What a great
Yeah,
day.
it's all about you.
Yeah. I suppose it was all so new. I'd run teams of producers, reporters and newsreaders in my show, but I hadn't run a team of mortgage advisors or financial advisors. I haven't run a team of administrators, and I certainly hadn't run a business in its own right, a limited company. So a lot of the stuff, the mistakes I made, they weren't going to get anybody in any real trouble. It was more about my own behaviour and how to manage other people in that scenario. So it's not like I went, well, that was a royal fuck up, we got sued 10 million quid, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
but it was more just small bad decisions, really. I think. Well, somebody else might tell you they were big bad decisions, but I don't know. It felt like lots of little series.
You're
of
still
small
there.
ones. Yeah, I'm still there, exactly. Yeah, and now I'm much more confident now, and we have the whole business is a very different place to when I came in 2017, 18.
What did you have to learn then? What were the new skills or the new behaviours that you had to adopt? With the businesswoman briefcase rather than the microphone in hand.
I had to learn over the years that people aren't motivated the same way, whereas lots of journalists are motivated the same way. So I'd left a culture of everybody being, I mean, individuals, don't get me wrong, but it's the storytelling, it's the story, it's the show, it's getting on air, it's the deadline, it's the 10 o'clock news. I went from a very environment where everybody was motivated in a very similar way to trying to learn how to get the best out of people who, some care about status, some care about income, some care about the client, some care about, those sort of core drivers. And that's taken me years. I probably still haven't got it really. But that was a real shift because it meant that the people I was working with, I was assuming everyone was like me and they're just not. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean one is better or worse. But that was a real shift for me to understand that actually I can't motivate all of these people in the way I would motivate myself.
Yeah.
And that was a hard lesson to learn because it meant that for a long time in our business, I was disliked, like quite strongly disliked. And I did have to make some very bold decisions early on. We were a business that wasn't cohesive at the time. People were all sort of doing their own thing, what they wanted to do, and trying to bring everybody together to work to the same goal was quite difficult in more than one way. One way was I didn't understand properly how to, because I'd never done it before. I was inexperienced. We had people who were resistant, who didn't want to be on the SSA bus. They didn't want the changes. And we had people who I thought very strongly were being damaged by what was happening in the business, by some of these behaviours in the business. There were people on the sidelines that I could see they weren't happy. They wanted to stay, but they weren't happy. And so trying to navigate that in those first few years was really hard. And I had to make bold decisions about who did and who didn't stay. And they were really difficult decisions for me because I'd never hired or fired somebody. That was, those stories that I had been listening to all those years as a journalist, I was becoming part of somebody's in a really negative way. So they were, really, really hard years. But ultimately, how you've been asking me this whole podcast, you've been saying like, but where did that come from? Where did that come from? I couldn't operate the team I have now if I hadn't been through that. Yeah. I think, and especially in business more so than in anything, you almost have to learn the hard way. It's the only way it really hits.
You mentioned being disliked. Do you feel that's a necessary part, something you've had to accept?
Yeah, I've always been disliked, actually. Like, not by everybody, but I don't think you can be a strong, independent woman with an opinion and be liked by everybody. That's it.
Tell me more.
Well, you just can't. It's just our society, right? I'm not meek, I'm not mild, I'm not the skinniest, I'm not the prettiest, I'm not the fattest, I'm not the most bold, I'm not the least bold. I'm just a woman doing her own thing. It's like that Barbie doll, not Barbie doll, what's it called? The movie Barbie, and they have that girl that goes, you have to be thin but not too thin, you have to be pretty but not threatening, and it's that we're always walking this tightrope, aren't we? And so whereas a man would be bold and confident, a woman's a bitch, and that's true of my whole life, because I won't march the beat of somebody else's drum, and people don't always like that. Some people love it, some people hate it. So I've always been disliked. I mean, you should see some of the stuff I got on the radio. Some of the feedback that were coming from listeners were like, wow! Like, honestly, some of it was so rude. And I never took it to heart. I never did. And my newsletter was brilliant at that. She always shielded me from it in the best way. She let me read it, but I wasn't allowed to respond. She responded. And her responses were brilliant because it was people just didn't like a woman often holding a man to account on there. They didn't like it. And so I used to get a lot of who does she think she is, like type stuff. So I'd always known what it was like to be disliked. But the difference is being disliked by a listener, someone you've never met, to being disliked by the people you work within the building.
Yeah.
That's harder.
How did it feel day to day?
Hard. Yeah, really hard. Like stomach churning, dreading going to work, hard. And I wouldn't have admitted this 8 years ago. I would never have let anybody know.
And the reason I ask is I'm a coach, obviously, and I have private conversations with lots of people who will be in that position now, only yesterday, chatting to people about their people, and how you motivate them and how you get them
you feel
to
sick.
do the things and how you get,
sick.
change. And
change is hard.
Do you effectively let them rule the roost and be liked? People wrestle with how to be, I think, in those situations.
So I think if you're wrestling with it, the team's wrong. And whether or not that's the answer people want to hear, I wrestled with it. I think I joined the build business in 2018, so I've been there 8 years. And I'd say the last 2 years have been my best, our best, the happiest. The team is amazing. I love when I say I love our team, I'm not just saying like, I love Team SSA. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we are a group of people who like each other, work well together, have each other's backs, and know that we've got there's one goal, and it's the client outcome. Yeah. It feels more akin to being at the BBC with those one goal producing a show. Now we've got one goal, it's the client outcome. And everybody knows it. And it's not a blame culture. It's not a pointing finger. It's not he said, she said, you didn't do this, you did, or it's just not like that. And it has been like that. But we've had members of staff who, I won't talk about individuals, but just genuinely weren't mature enough to be in the business. And their behaviour showed it. And then we've had members of staff who were cliquey and playgroundy. And we've had members of staff who thought they were bigger than the business and thought that the business would never survive without them. But none of these people are team players. And we've rewritten our values twice since I've been on board, and the values that we have now have been the same for a good few years now. And teamwork, we win as one is one of our values. And that was when I first came in, it was really apparent there was no teamwork. And that's what I mean by some of the people who are still with us now, who've been with us for years and years, at the time were being damaged by other people's behaviour within the business. And that for me really wasn't acceptable, which is when those sort of tough decisions came in. And I think the thing that's really hard when you first start doing it is that those tough decisions feel like the end of the world. You feel like you're in a black hole, you've got no support, it's very lonely. You don't know if you're doing the right thing. You're probably acting on gut feeling because you haven't got the experience to back it up. And so they're awful, awful times, like where you just feel sick all the time. I used to feel physically sick coming into work. What was I going to face? And it was, my business. That was the worst. But I was like, this is my business. Like, how am I allowing this to continue? But I think ultimately the decisions were right, but it didn't make them any easier. Just being right doesn't make it easy. And you still doubt yourself and you doubt the decision, and then you have the fallout afterwards, and you've got to deal with the fallout and people who felt loyal, or some people are elated, some people feel really sad, and then you've got just to manage that divide in the business. And what I think is really telling now is that when something's not right in our business now, everyone knows it's not right. There's no divide. There's no that should have happened, that shouldn't have happened. Yeah. Everyone's like, that should or shouldn't have happened. Together we make that decision. It feels very
and then we can fix it together.
Aligned. Yes. Yeah. It's been years to get here. Yeah. Like I don't take it lightly. What we have now is very precious. Like it's not been an easy journey.
Mm. You said you find it difficult to ask for help. Did you ask for help at any point during that process? No.
Well, did I ask for help? A little bit, I think. Yeah, I had people to lean on. So who would I ask for help from? Well, I work with Bobby, my husband. And although what was interesting was, although he'd been in financial services for a really long time, he also was new to that position in the business. So we relied very heavily on each other. And we're also polar opposites in how we operate, which was actually a positive in these scenarios, because my sort of, right, just do it, get in there, jump on it, blah, blah, blah. And his much more cautious meant that we probably met in the middle somewhere, which was good for us both. I won't mention names, but I did have some other businesswomen locally who I leaned on. And if I felt really, the days where you just feel like you're the worst person in the world and you can't get anything right, there was people I could talk to. And I did have a little bit of coaching, but I'm not easily coached. So I never really had a lot of it. The coaching I had did really help, actually, but I'm not easily coached, and I don't find being coached easy either. So don't tend to do a lot of it. I should really. I know I should, and the fact that I find it hard means I should do more. But I
feel a challenge.
But yeah, no, I didn't really ask for a lot of help, and I also felt really strongly, and I still do feel this a little bit. They were my decisions to make, and therefore, if I or Bobby, the two of us, if we were making the decision, we had to do it, we had to say it, we had to live it, we had to clear up the fallout. In terms of responsibility, autonomy, accountability, though, if I wanted other people to behave like that, I had to do the same thing. I didn't have someone from HR come in and tell these people that they had to go. I did it. I didn't have HR do interviews for new people. I still do them. I've been interviewing this morning for a new role. So whilst we have HR support where we need it, so we have the right expert advice and policies and contracts and things, ultimately the decisions are mine. And if somebody else makes that decision and they fuck it up, I don't want to feel pissed off. I need to be pissed off with myself if they're big decisions.
And was that one of the first times? Because the way you described lots of the other things that when you talked about starting them, was like, it was amazing. It was amazing. Was that one of the first times?
It wasn't.
It
amazing.
really hadn't been amazing.
It wasn't amazing. Yeah, it was far from amazing.
Totally opposite.
It was awful. The whole time was horrendously awful. Why did I stay? The tricky thing is, I joined in 2018 part-time as an advisor, and I learned the business as an advisor.
Yeah.
Over 19 and 20, I moved into more decision-making roles. And then in 2020, just as I became a proper senior in the business, we went into lockdown. So we went into lockdown at the same time as we were trying to make some quite serious people changes. And we had a court case, and we had that all happened. So my first 2-3 years in business, I had all of that. That shit show, if you like. And whilst it's taken me probably only about 2 or 3 years ago, that period of my life where I went into the business and we had lockdown and
you were in a caravan
after that.
And we were in those timings all together.
Yes. It's taken me till now to be able to speak about it without crying, because it was awful. Like the pressure of maintaining all of these people's jobs, because the financial services just went, but it just bottomed out. So we had to maintain all of these people's jobs. So we had this period where I was battling against everything. It wasn't even just one or two things. It was everything. It was the house move. It was like worrying about my children because of what was happening to them in COVID, and trying to get my head around the fact that I was having really serious team talks to people with my 2-year-old jumping about in a nappy behind me, like, clambering on me half naked. There was nothing normal about that time. I'm aware of that for everybody as well. It wasn't a normal time. But in terms of how it formed me now as a businesswoman, if you like, or informed how I behave now, and you asking about it being amazing, it was absolutely not amazing. There was nothing amazing about it. It's taken me till now to stop crying about it. But in terms of how I developed over that period, there were hard, sharp, steep lessons that I had to clear up after. Yeah, if I made the wrong decision.
Yeah. If you were to coach yourself now in that situation, if you could go back and be the coach to the uncoachable, what would you want you to realise?
I was going to say I wouldn't coach me. I'd say, no, leave her alone. She can get on with it. What would I want me to realise? This too shall pass, is what I would say. Yeah. And I know that now in business, in everything. this too shall pass, as they say. I don't know where that phrase comes from, but I quite like it. That nothing's forever, nothing's permanent. The feeling will pass. The people will move on. The gossip will stop. All of it will improve. I was really disliked. Like, there were people talking about me outside of the business. There were people within the business that were unhappy who were going outside of the business, talked to people outside of the business who were unhappy. And then it was coming back to me through other business contacts saying, do you know what so-and-so said about you? And I'm like, crikey. So I think this too shall pass is one thing. The other thing is to find more people like you who are responsible for the types of things you're responsible for. So all my friends in journalism couldn't possibly have understood. Yeah. And they were, I still love them all, but the pressure of other people's income is a great responsibility. And I don't think I was ready for that pressure. Or it wasn't that I wasn't ready for it. I could cope with it. I understood it. But did I understand the weight of it or what it was going to feel like? Probably not. And I think what I've really learned in business is that ultimately people have to take care of themselves. Like, it's not, I don't say that as a negative. When I help my people take care of themselves, because that's important. If the role isn't right for them, if they're becoming unhappy in the workplace, we need to find something that makes them happy, whether that's with us or outside of SSA. I couldn't have had that perspective back then, because it just everything felt too much. Everything felt personal. Everything was spiraling. So I think this too shall pass would be one thing I would have liked to have told Emma in the beginning. And what was the other thing I said? That second thing. What was important? I've forgotten it.
The second thing was find people who get it.
Yes, just people who have similar decision-making responsibilities and understand the weight.
And the third thing is, I suppose, to paraphrase, it's not your task. It's their task. They're adults, effectively, as well, responsible for their own.
Yeah, it can't all be your problem.
Yeah.
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 I'm not sure if those are things that coaches would say, but that's if I was trying to give me advice back then, they're the types of things I might have said.
So how are things now?
Now,
yeah, because we have to finish off, don't we?
What time is it?
We have to have the story arc.
I feel really bad. I feel like I should be sitting asking you some questions. I've just literally gone on and on and on. It's like my wedding day. It's all about me. So how are things now? Now, Emma is 43, coming up 44 in October, has a wonderful summer holiday booked, which I'm really, really excited about because I've done a thing. You're saying about doing a thing?
Doing a thing.
I've chartered a yacht. And Bobby was just like, you've done what? I was like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we're doing that.
Bobby. I must get Bobby on at some point to replay his half of this conversation.
Yeah,
and then she did this.
Interesting. I wonder what that would sound like. He's much more of an introvert, so you'd have to really work hard to get Bobby to chat for an hour. So I'm really looking forward to us on the holiday. 3 kids, all happy. 3 kids in 3 different schools because that's what suits them, each individual child. Really happy in business, really amazing, cohesive, lovely team of 12. We shrunk, we shrunk, grew, shrunk again. Anyway, now we're in a very positive position and we're just starting to grow again. We're very much, very, very cautious now in who we invite into the business. Our sort of interview process and values and everything are very, very firm and very strong. We know who we are and we know who we want in the business with us. Difficult decisions are still difficult. That's why they're difficult decisions, but they are made more quickly. With that, as I was saying before, with the experience that I'm making the right decision. So although you can feel like you're making the right decision, if it's not backed up by experience, it just feels like gut. It's a bit more scary. Yeah. So the difficult decisions aren't as scary because I have experience and I know what to trust and also I know which experts I can rely on and where to go for a bit of support. So from a business perspective, it's amazing, brilliant. Everything's going very well. We've had a few ups and downs, but the downs are still ups, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Whereas the downs were very firmly downs. So we bought a business July last year. Yes, and that's gone incredibly well. Those clients have all integrated into our current clients very well, and financially very positive. Then we were looking to buy another business, and that all went tits up, so that didn't happen. I won't go into too much detail about that, but it was again another learning curve for me. I learned a lot about acquisitions, about people in acquisitions, about what to look out for, where I would bend, where I'm not willing to bend. I know you live through that, don't you? And then you go, actually, yeah, I was right not to bend there. I know that now, and I don't even need to consider it next time. That's not something I'll bend on. So that was also overall positive experience, in my opinion. Like the fact that we're in a position where we're looking at buying a second business is very positive to me. You know, it's like, that's what I mean by the low is still a high. It's still, it's a high low. And then we've got a wonderful, wonderful team who are dealing with more clients now than we ever have before. Our turnover is up, despite the fact that we are 10 people down. We have got, what else have we got coming up? We've got the end of our business year is May, so we always have a really big meeting in June, and this June it's going to be a great meeting because we've had a really good year. So it's a celebration meeting, which will be nice. We're looking for another mortgage advisor at the moment, so we're also going through interviews. I actually really love that. I love recruiting. But then it's that same thing. I'm like, so what did you do before? Who are you? I get to meet someone new and grill them for an hour. So that's a lovely process to be taking part in. On a personal note, what am I doing? I'm taking part in an adult PE day on Saturday. I'm dreading it.
Yeah, I was going to say that your body language didn't suggest joy.
Oh, yeah. Ian Martin, that's his fault. He's a personal trainer in Carlisle, and he's running this adult PE day at the gym, and he's roped me into it, and I've agreed to it. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I'm really strong, I'm going to do it. And there's another part of it that's like, I'm not very strong. It's going to be really hard. But that's coming up at the weekend, I think on the 10th. Is it the 10th this weekend? What's the date? Yeah.
It Saturday. Is, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, but really a bit like just plodding along now with life and quite enjoying things.
The 8-year-old with her dreams, we had journalist and we had businesswoman, and they were the only two.
Yeah.
Do you think that means this one is now forever, or do you think there's something else somewhere?
Forever. Yeah, never say forever. You never know, I might become a sailor after a holiday.
Sailor. A pirate.
Pirate. I'm going to get a pirate flag and put
Emma
it on
never
my house.
came back.
Yeah.
She stole the boat.
She's still at sea. Is there anything else that I would want to do at the minute, I suppose? No, not right now. But I'd never say forever. You never know what might take your fancy. Right now, things are really positive. We're in a very good place with all the people around us, with family, with the house, and it's a really really content, lovely feeling right now. So I wouldn't want to say it'll last forever, but let's make it last as long as it can.
Bask in that bliss.
Yeah, and then who knows what the future holds.
Thank you. And that's a great place to end.
Okay,
Thank you so much. That's been fascinating. Thank you for listening. You can hear more stories like this, tips, inspiration and tricks at reflectiverebels.co.uk/newsletter. And I would love you to subscribe and leave a review and a comment wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Ben. This is the Reflective Rebels podcast.